Hi, welcome back everybody to my channel. I am Corey Cook, also known as the Bearded Cinephile. And today I'm going to present a video that's kind of a little bit different than what I usually do. When I first started this channel, my primary focus was to have the idea of I'm going to do a lot of film reviews. I'm going to do a lot of trailer reactions, maybe occasionally do an interview if that ever happens. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the thing is, when it comes to movies, I feel very passionate about certain situations. There's things that come up in the industry that I really love to discuss that kind of get my fires going and maybe will prompt me to do a video. I've thought for a couple weeks now, for example, about doing one on the WGA strike. Haven't gotten there yet. But something happened this last week that really kind of compelled me to get off the fence about doing a video about this, and I decided to kind of go through with it. And I really want to talk about Rotten Tomatoes. And I want to talk about how it pertains to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which kind of prompted this video, so to speak. And to be perfectly honest, so Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny premiered at Cannes Film Festival last week. And to be honest, the reviews from the critics, and mind you, there's only been 31 reviews so far because it doesn't release widely until next month, till June 30th, have been mixed, to say the least. And a lot of people are really kind of pointing to the Rotten Tomatoes scores than anything. Some people were even pointing to it when there was 8 reviews and like it was a 40%, in which was just considered negative. And I'll get to how Rotten Tomatoes works in just a little bit because I feel like that needs some context. And I will admit my bias in the fact that Indiana Jones is my favorite movie character of all time. Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite film of all time. And I'm biased in the fact that I really want this film to be good and to be successful and to do well. So I'll own that up front. I haven't seen the film yet. I'm going to be seeing it next month. I'm very excited. It could very well be a disaster. I don't think it's going to be. I hope it's not. But I think I hopefully that I'll enjoy it. But I can admit to the fact that it may be disappointing. I may have a bad time. It may not be what I'm looking for. That's perfectly fine. That's kind of not what I'm getting at today. Is the idea that people, especially on social media, specifically Twitter, went off about and just ran with this situation. And they took what they considered to be mixed reviews and are presenting the narrative that it's negative, that the movie is bad. And they are using Rotten Tomatoes as a justification to do so, which isn't the correct tactic. And I think it's because of the fact that we've gotten very reductive when it comes to films nowadays. And when this whole first situation started coming out last week, I was very emotional, I was very upset, and I wanted to sit here and say, Rotten Tomatoes is the worst thing to happen in film discourse ever. It's awful, it's garbage, it's this, it's that, and the other thing, which is really not the case. What I've come to the conclusion in doing some research and really thinking about this topic is that Rotten Tomatoes as a system, which is an aggregator, is not something it's not the worst thing that's ever happened to film discourse. The way people use and interpret Rotten Tomatoes is the worst thing that's ever happened to film discourse. So before I get into the specifics of that, and by the way, this is probably going to be a longer video because I'm going to be going off on some rants here and there. I'll try to edit it down where I can. But before I kind of move forward, I think it's important to know how Rotten Tomatoes actually works, because a lot of people, I think, don't know how it works. And it's also important to know how people use it in spite of how it actually works. So what you used to have back in the day, and you still do to a certain extent, is you have the trade publications, your newspapers, your magazines, whatever, have a specific movie critic assigned to them, whether that's, Pete Hammond, if it was, Siskel and Ebert, if it was Owen Gleiberman, whoever it would be. And they would give their review. That was their job, that they went on, they'd review 80, 90, 100 films a year. And if you wanted to have a comparison between reviews, you'd have to buy a whole bunch of newspapers in order to do so, which obviously can be quite cumbersome. So enter in Rotten Tomatoes, which came in 1998. And the idea at the time was to compile all these movie reviews in the same area so that you could have a quick comparison. You could jump from one to one. You wouldn't have to buy all these newspapers. And then as time went on, you started to add smaller newspapers. You started to add websites. You started to add YouTube reviewers that were very popular and offered, good insights and stuff. Guys like, Chris Stuckman, Jeremy Johns, some of the people that I, in fact, do file and I think have some value. Now, on the surface, that sounds really good, right? You have that accessibility, just like a lot of things Inter provides, where you can just go get that information, read, and have comparisons. The problem is that humans are these distracted, impatient people, and it evolved rather into let's go read the reviews and do the comparisons. And I'm not saying everybody doesn't do that. There's still people who do. To the question of, okay, how many actual people liked this movie or disliked this movie? So what do you get from there? You get the tomato meter. What does that mean? So if most reviewers like a movie, it's you get a red tomato. It needs to be at least 60%. That means it's fresh. If it's below 60%, it means it's rotten. If you're certified fresh, it means at least 70% or higher after a set amount of reviews have come out to get it to be certified fresh. So it's 80 for a wide release, 40 for a limited release, and you need to have at least 5 top film critics, and that's kind of, you can be Rotten Tomatoes official if you apply and do all these things. I've done it before. I don't think it's ever going to happen for me. So what happens then is you get a movie that you look at, and it has that Rotten Tomatoes score, the percentage, right? So, for example, let's take a look at 1998's Godzilla, which currently has a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, this does not mean that it's a 19 out of 100, right? It's a percentage of how many reviewers like this movie. In order to kind of get to the specifics, you need to get a little more granular in this case. This is where it could get tricky, because 19% could have given it just a passing score of that 19%, or 19% of them could said this was an A+ movie. Doubtful, because I have seen it myself, but nevertheless. And then the remaining 81% could have given it a C+, because maybe they consider that to be quote unquote rotten. So contextually, the film itself could have had like a C- average as a whole, if you look at the whole 100%. But the perception that comes through here is that it's 19 out of 100, right? And then let's look at the opposite. Let's look at a film from this year that I saw, which is Megan. If you look at it right now, it's a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. Again, this doesn't mean that it's a 93 out of 100 in this case. It just means that a certain amount of reviewers, 93%, gave it the B, which is fresh, which considers it to be fresh. If it had 100%, it just could mean that everyone thought it was perfectly fine. It doesn't mean that it's just because Megan has a 93%, it's on par with, Goodfellas or, Citizen Kane or Casablanca or something like that. It's just an average of how many reviewers gave it a fresh rating. So, and that's the key thing to remember, is that Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregator. It just averages scores. So it just means that enough reviewers, in this case, liked it or disliked it enough to give it whatever that specific score may be. Now, here's where the problem comes in. And here's where I have an issue where I think it's the worst thing ever to happen to film discourse in terms of how people utilize Rotten Tomatoes, is that the majority of the people who go to the website don't know what I just told you, don't utilize Rotten Tomatoes from that facet. They really see this as a number grade. So if they look at a Godzilla from 1998 and they see a 19% Rotten Tomatoes score, that's a 19 out of 100 for them. That this movie failed, it sucks, it's terrible. Or conversely, if they go to that and they see Megan's 93, they see that as a 93 out of 100. Oh, this is an A-, type of movie. And the problem with that is that it makes things super reductive. You are taking a film that was worked on by hundreds of people with script writers and producers and directors that can be that's very typically very nuanced, very intricate, and you're reducing it down to a number. That's why, I write reviews because I like to write, and I'm hoping that people like to read them. If I just wanted to give it a score, I'd give it a score, but that's not the point. It's what I'm trying to say is it's very reductive. So you can look at movies like, Top Gun or Spaceballs, that both have Rotten Tomatoes scores. But I think if you talk to the average movie person, they think that both of those movies were classics. I personally do in this case, and maybe not classics, but they're excellent films. And again, this is where Rotten Tomatoes it kind of destroys the discourse. We're not talking about the films; we're talking about the specific scores, which is problematic. And the reason that it's also problematic and makes for bad film discourse is because we take that score and we move it into other avenues that start to justify, to be quite honest, stupid things and stupid decisions. As I said, there are people out there who are going to just use Rotten Tomatoes as a benchmark. They look at the score, they think that's it, and then they're good to go. There's guys that are people who are just going to do that.
I hate these guys.
And it's problematic. And the reason that I'm thinking that I can see right away, right now, in relation to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, where this is that film discourse starts to devolve. We've now reached to the point where it's warping our perceptions about what we know to already be true. And I will give you kind of example of that as it relates to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and that's this. I'm starting to see discourse out that right now where essentially it's James Mangold is bad, actually, as a director, as a storyteller, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Like I want to read real quick what this one person wrote. His name, and mind you, this is Matt Neglia, who writes for Next Best Picture, NBP. And he actually gave Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny a pretty favorable, it was an average review. He gave it about a C. But within the review, he said this about Dial of Destiny. He said, the missing component is Steven Spielberg. For as talented as a director as James Mangold is, he cannot measure up to the cinematic brilliance that Spielberg imbues into each of his products. And to be fair, there are a few who can. Mangold has always been a reliable studio-for-hire director, lacking in his style and directorial stamp. So here's the thing. And maybe I'm reading this wrong. I'm not sure, because he did say that, Mangold is talented. But for us to sit here and say that Mangold has no signature stamp makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, like, the guy is an excellent director, an excellent writer. He's done stuff like 3:10 to Yuma, Girl Interrupted, Logan, Walk the Line. Very varied types of roles here, or very projects that he's done. So I don't see how you would say that he has a signature stamp. And this is not the only conversation I've seen within this about saying Mangold, isn't that great, actually. And I don't understand how people think that he's like a studio for hire director. You're saying we're supposed to have just one person stick with one studio their life, and if not, they're that kind of devalues what it is to be a director. I'm not really sure what the statement is that they're trying to make here. And I feel like I'm a little bit starting to ramble, so I will kind of bottle this up a little bit and get a little bit quicker, or get to the point, so to speak, a little bit more. Is that I just want to say that that Rotten Tomatoes should not be your benchmark for whether or not you go and see a film. And to be specific, the score that the Rotten Tomatoes says for a specific movie should not be your benchmark about whether or not you go and see the film. I think you should go to see a film if you want to see it, regardless of what the critics say. Again, that's a little bit more problematic, or it has some issues now because things have got more expensive, etc. But I mean, if you're going to pay attention to Rotten Tomatoes, at least go in with the knowledge that it is an aggregator, that it is what I discussed it to be, that you may want to, if you believe in the critics aspect of things, that you may want to look at what the average critics score, and even more so beyond that. Why don't you go ahead and actually read the reviews to see what they say? Because I think more and more that there's such a basis on Rotten Tomatoes about these movies now that we've took it to be the end all be all everything. And end of the day, sometimes that can financially impact a movie, and to a degree that it maybe shouldn't. Maybe that costs the director, an actor, whatever other projects that they could have done, when there's not enough context, there's not enough nuance when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes and how people actually use it as a tool. So that's my rant. I kind of had to go off on this. I felt hopefully I was a little bit, you can understand where I'm coming from on this point. And again, this fired me up because I'm excited about Indiana Jones, and I'm just tired of people using Rotten Tomatoes in like the worst way possible. So that's my thoughts on Rotten Tomatoes. That's my initial thoughts on what I feel about what's going on in Cannes with debuting a film like that. There, it kind of is what it is situation or whatever. But what do you guys think? What's your feeling about Rotten Tomatoes? Do you use it? Do you not use it? Do you use it in the way that most people, I believe, do? Do you use it in a more granular, specific, contextual way? How do you feel about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? Are you excited to see it? Are you not excited to see it? Are you less excited to see it based on some of the reviews that are coming out of Cannes? What's your thought process on that? And again, just kind of, by the way, just to kind of add something on here, I feel like some reviewers are going into this expecting us to be Steven Spielberg, and to recapture the glory days of, the first three films, or even the original film. It's not going to happen, guys. It's just that ship has sailed. It's not going to be a situation. We're never going to get back to that point. And I think going in there with that expectation, it's gonna be failure. You're bound to be let down. And I'm not going in there with that attitude. I'm going in that. I think it was my podcast partner said something like everything is gravy, that we have it after those first three initial films. So whatever we get, I'll be excited for. I'm not expecting it to be Raiders. I'm just expecting it to be enjoyable. And with all the players that involve this cast, this director, the topics I've seen in some of the reviews, I'm excited. I'm not expecting it to be Raiders, which is my favorite film, but I think it's going to be a worthy addition. I even appreciate Crystal Skull for what it is. I initially hated it. Now I've come to like it, and I actually kind of like it. It's kind of my third. Fourth is Temple of Doom for me, and I know that's an unpopular opinion for some people, but hey, that's where it is. Anyway, I'm rambling again. So what did you guys think? Hit me up in the comments. Let me know. I'm really interested in what you have to say. And always, if you can, like and subscribe to my channel. I am Corey Van Castle Cook, the Bearded Cinephile, and we'll see you next time.